What makes a leader? What pulls us beyond what we thought was our best and into sustained greatness? Tune in right here with Ron Kitchens to learn how to challenge and change your best so that you can move forward into leading at your highest level.
Hello, I'm Shannon Allen here on the Always Forward Leadership Podcast with Ron Kitchens. Ron, how are you today?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I am doing great. I'm glad to hear you're doing awesome.
I know I'm freaked out a little bit because there's a drink by my foot and I know I'm going to kick it over. So I'm going to move this thing. All right, I'm back.
Awesome. So I am pretty stoked about today's episode. We're going to be talking about something that you have been passionately kind of pouring out about here recently. Before we jump into that, I want to know, what is the most interesting thing you've watched on TV lately?
I've actually been catching up on a lot of things. I think maybe the most interesting thing I have watched in the last couple of years, and it's people are we're gonna get all kinds of haters texting and tweeting, and it's at Ron Kitchens. Go ahead, or Ron at ronkitchens.com. Let it pour out. I think Ted Lasso may be the new Sopranos.
Nice. I haven't seen Ted Lasso yet, but I've heard amazing reviews about it.
The final episode, maybe the final 2 episodes of this season, were so emotionally poignant on multiple levels and such a lesson in leadership. And I don't want to ruin it for you and those who haven't seen it, but the final even half of the final episode of the season is such a leadership lesson. I've watched it 4 times now and taken multiple notes that I want to be able to use as examples, and the notes are always different.
Oh, wow.
About the layers, and look at what we see from over the season. One of the characters' personality begins to go darker and darker, and his hair color changes. And I didn't notice till the end of the season how dramatically his hair changed to match the personality of it. And so it's a show that's really easy to take for granted, that it's this cute soccer show. It's this cute comedy. It has a little bit of poignancy. It is brilliantly written.
That is awesome.
Brilliant.
So I have been here lately. Well, I watched this documentary called Lula Rich on Amazon Prime the other night. And so a lot of the ladies listening will know about LuLaRoe, which was like a company that produced like leggings and skirts and maxi skirts and things like that. But it basically became a multi-level marketing company that kind of blew up over time. And it was really interesting because, of course, they have the owners, being interviewed, but then they have all these other people, who were saying, well, it was actually a pyramid scheme. It was actually this and that. And they really kind of rode the wave of female empowerment. But then when you talk to women who were in the business, they weren't as empowered as, the brand was. So it was a really interesting watch, just from the standpoint of seeing different people's perspectives of the same happening that was going on. So
that is always fascinating.
Yes, it was really cool.
Yeah. And, I have a great friend, Liz Forkin-Bohannon, who's the founder of Sesco Designs. And Liz went from a traditional shoe and women's apparel company in stores, all the traditional route, to moving to a mom-centric sales force and much more home sales kind of thing. A terrible analogy, and Liz would kill me for using this, but Mary Kay for clothes, and their business has exploded. And one of the reasons I like Liz so much, and one, she's really freaking funny, but her company was built around the idea of doing good. So she started the shoe company so she could pay for scholarships for women and I don't remember the particular country in Africa, and I hate it when people say Africa like it's this one place, like it's this village.
Or they
crossroads.
say the African language, and it's like, which of the thousands of dialects are you talking about? Yeah.
So it's my ignorance, not. Please don't dump this on this. She has told me multiple times, but she's killing it, and she's thousands of women who've gone to primary school and higher education because of the work that she's been able to bring to those places, the professionalism, and really that sense of true ownership.
Wow.
And so there are great stories out there about women who are changing the world.
Yes, I really love that. So to jump into what we have on the docket today, I want to talk about staying on the wall. And so as we're recording this today, we not too long ago celebrated Nehemiah Day.
We did.
Which was, commemorates when he completed the wall around Jerusalem, along with a host of other people in 52 days. Yep. And you have just really been sharing some awesome leadership insight around that. And I thought that'd be great for us to talk about today. And specifically talking about Nehemiah's example of how he avoided and eliminated distractions to reach that goal of getting that wall built. So you did a really cool social media post the other day talking about staying on the wall. Mm-hmm. So, one thing that's interesting, I went back and I read the story of Nehemiah, and it is a historical account. It's not a parable or fable, it's a historical account. And so there were people who were kind of heckling Nehemiah as he was trying to build this wall. And so I'd love to talk about, right voices versus wrong voices. And so how do we learn how to filter out the voices that don't bring value to what we're doing?
Yeah, I think that's one of those great questions. And there's a bunch of ways I can, approach that. The simple version is, there's a reason some cliches are cliches because they're true. Mm-hmm. And there's a cliche of you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. So, it's a cliche, but it's true. And if you just think about it, so, if you're hanging out with a bunch of people that are not achieving anything, you're probably not achieving anything.
Right.
If you're hanging out with millionaires, you're going to learn the secrets of becoming a millionaire. So we have to remind ourselves that you've got to filter out those that aren't focused on your goal. Mm-hmm. And I've spent a lot of time in the last decade or so coaching college athletes on non-playing areas. Right. And it really is this idea of, and a lot of them have gone on to play in the NFL and the NBA. Mm-hmm. And the hard thing for them is even when they go to college, the people from the neighborhood want free tickets. Right. They want free clothing. They want free this. They want free that. Well, that player doesn't really have access to those things. Mm-hmm. Player has to pay for those tickets. Right. They don't have extra clothing with the logo to give away on it. So it becomes this animosity thing and this, posses, if you will, of people, these hangers-on are abusing those relationships. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things you have to teach those folks is you have to create boundaries. You have to stay up on the wall. Your job is first and foremost to get a college education.
Absolutely.
So that you can take care of your family and change generations. Mm-hmm. So that's first thing is you're here to change generations. Second thing is you're here to play sports. Third thing is you're here to win in sports. Mm-hmm. None of those involve getting your mother's cousin's brother, his nephew, free clothing, right, free swag, or free tickets, or access to the locker room. And so we have to create those filters and those barriers. We wouldn't let cancer in our bodies intentionally, although I know people still smoke and they're doing that intentionally, but none of us think that's smart. Right. None of us think that Copenhagen's going to add years to our lives. Right. So we have to create those barriers. For Nehemiah, it was saying, I can't come down. Mm-hmm. I got to stay up here on this ladder. I got to rebuild this wall. That's what matters to me. Mm-hmm. For us in our world today, we have to know what we want and then say, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. I don't have to hate you.
Right.
I just don't have to associate with you.
Right. And that reminds me, what you're talking about how when you begin to achieve and succeed and work towards a goal, people come out of the woodworks, to be a part, but not to really be a part of getting it done. And it made me think about MC Hammer. What a great story and lesson about that, how he became famous, became successful as a musician, but put pretty much everybody in his life on his payroll and ended up having to declare bankruptcy after that. And so, like you said, it may not be that they have evil intentions towards you, but they're just not looking to work to help you to get to that goal. They're just in it for themselves.
That's right.
So, that's really great wisdom. So, most of the very successful people that I know, obviously they have people who love them, but then they also have, like Nehemiah had, the hecklers.
Yep.
The negative voices, the voices that do intend evil. How do you shield those voices and shield yourself from those voices?
Well, I think the first thing is it is 100% okay to block people.
Mm-hmm.
I just had somebody on one of the social media this morning that I had to go in and block because this person clearly is probably mentally ill.
Mm-hmm.
Is trying to sell me on this idea. It's not something I have time for, I'm interested in, but was getting more and more and more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I participate in that, I'm coming off the wall. I can't do what I'm supposed to do in my world.
Absolutely.
If I'm participating in theirs. So they got blocked. They can't get to me now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to deal with that foolishness. But it's just like, the cancer metaphor. We wouldn't inject cancer into our body. So why are we letting people who are cancerous?
Right.
There's a book out, the no a-hole rule or, no jerks. You can't allow that because there will be people who, whose lives you're trying to change and save, much like Nehemiah.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of building the wall wasn't to keep people in, it was to keep evil out.
Absolutely.
But yet you had people on the inside fighting that because change is so scary for people, or because they are so used to the norm that anything outside of the norm must be dangerous.
Right.
And thus is to be feared and opposed.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes it tough.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. But you've got to know what's important, and you got to know what you are trying to achieve, because then it clearly tells you what's not important.
Absolutely. So what do right voices sound like, and how do you know when a voice is safe for you?
They're cheering for you regardless of the impact it has on their lives.
Wow. Yeah.
And so the people who will cheer for you, even if it seemingly costs them, costs them emotionally, costs them in their fame or their self-perception, costs them. We see great athletes who are number one in the field. You see it at the Olympics every 4 years, where a runner is the best in the world and then gets beat in the finals. And what does that runner do? It immediately goes to the person, or she or he goes to the person and gives them a hug and congratulates them. That's when you're hanging out with the best. That's what it looks like. But if you're succeeding and they're telling you, well, you're not that great. You're not that worthy. You're not that pretty. You're not that smart.
They're trying to keep
You're
you humble.
not that fast. Trying to keep you up. Let's just keep it real. Let's just keep it real. The devil doesn't need an advocate. The devil's got everything. So he don't need an advocate. You got to get those people out. You got to get them out.
So true. Wow, that's really good. So,
But let's also be right. There's also the person who comes to you and says you're better than that. And don't hang out with those people. They're just trying to do that. You hang out with me.
Absolutely.
So the Bible teaches, and this is not a faith-based podcast, but the Bible teaches us that the devil comes to us in two forms. He comes to us in pure evil and pure joy. And we have to be able to discern that and know what our needs, wants, and desires are.
Right. And I love that, we've talked before about how even like in an organization or a company or in a friendship, in a relationship, you harm that person more when you see things that could help them and you don't speak up.
That's right.
You bring more harm. So
you wouldn't let a bus run over them without trying to grab them to pull them out of the way, but we do that metaphorically all the time.
Absolutely. So another part of the story with Nehemiah is there were people who actually wanted him to come down off the wall to celebrate, because, and if you don't know, this was a huge deal for Jerusalem. These are people who have been captured by just about anybody who could capture them. They've been enslaved, they've been in bondage, but now some of them are back in Jerusalem and they want to rebuild this wall. So it was a very momentous occasion, and they wanted him to come down and, hey, let's celebrate this. And Nehemiah had to say no. And so, watching out for the good distractions. How do we discern when something that seems good is actually just a distraction?
I think first thing you have to know what you want. You don't pull up and celebrate the race in the middle of the race. NASCAR doesn't have at the 200th lap of a 300 lap race, everybody stops and celebrates where they're at.
Right.
There may be moral intermediate wins, but we don't stop for moral intermediate wins.
Right.
We have to finish it. So you got to know that. You have to know what's important. You also have to know that it is just like when you're jogging, and I don't clearly spend a lot of time jogging.
Me either.
But I have done that before. And you come up to a corner to the intersection and the light's red and you got to stop. It takes a lot more energy to restart that than it did just to run through that intersection. And by stopping, sometimes we don't have the energy to get back off the couch.
Right.
We've all done that on Saturday afternoon. Yes. I'll just go ahead and rest my back a little bit. And the next thing we know,
the house only gets half clean.
Yeah, that's right. I'm 7 hours into that Ted Lasso binging.
Right. And you never know when you're stopping to celebrate a win, how close you were to the next win. Yeah. Sometimes you get distracted by that, and it's like, no, there was a better victory right like 2 feet away from you had you not stopped.
That's right.
So that's really good. So obviously there has to be balance because, we are in the hustle culture, and, I like to hustle. I like to grind, right there with the rest of them. But, particularly like during the pandemic, there was this meme that was going around of, if you don't come out of shelter in place with a new business, then you're not doing life right. And it's like, some people are losing their family members to COVID. They don't have time to worry about a business.
That's right.
Some people did.
Their fruit chopping business.
Exactly. And so, and then there are times where I've seen things where it's like, if you want to be successful in life, don't talk to your family, don't talk to your friends, never turn the TV on, never do this, never. And it's like, so am I just going to work for work's sake? Am I never going to enjoy the fruits of that labor? So how do you keep that balance?
Yeah, I think we have a culture, and it's not just the American or the Western culture, but I think the planet has lost the ability to define joy. If we still had bookstores that were full of books, if we went to a bookstore full of books, we would find there are thousands of books on happiness, finding happiness. And my friend Charles Duhigg has written a great book on happiness. And but the fact of the matter is, happiness to most people seems unattainable. So for me, I like the word joy better. What gives you joy and peace? And that's where balance is found.
Right.
And it's different times in different lives in different days. So what will give me joy and peace on a weekend is something that gives me anxiety during the week. So I'm somebody, if I sit around on the weekend, I am miserable come Monday. I need to feel like I achieved things. But if I've got that to-do list laying there all week of the things I've got to do, the anxiety is almost crippling. So what is joyful at one point is anxiety riddled at the other.
Absolutely.
So we have to intellectually manage ourselves and define what's important to us and define what we will want to excel through, not be owned by.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. Like that. So yeah, having balance. So there was another part of the story. Well, it's still that same part where they wanted him to come down to celebrate the win. And I really thought about that. I was like, had Nehemiah been a very prideful person, that probably would have been easy for him to do. We've been building for about 3 days. We deserve this break, And so I think staying humble is also kind of a big key to staying on the wall. So how would you say that pride makes us vulnerable to being easily distracted?
Yes, I think it's a great question because there's nothing wrong with the celebratory party. I like cowboy metaphors, and there's a reason cowboys got paid at the end of the cattle drive and not the middle, because they'd start celebrating in the middle and the job wasn't done yet.
Right.
So we got to make sure the job's done before we celebrate, or it's a smart time to celebrate. Mm-hmm. I've played for a lot of great coaches through the years, and the ones that I really look back and appreciate are those that didn't let us celebrate in immediate wins. Mm-hmm. It was, you won today. That just gives us the right to play tomorrow, and the right to try to win tomorrow to get to a championship 6 weeks from now.
Right.
But we don't celebrate with champagne after every win.
Right.
Champagne is reserved for the last day of the year.
Yeah.
For those championships, not the playoffs, not the I don't get the you qualify for the playoffs and we have to cover the locker room in plastic. I don't get fans taking the field. I think they should all be arrested. Yeah. It drives me crazy. I really do. I find it infuriating and insulting to the players for fans to pour out of the stands, put the players in danger, particularly with today's world. So, we've got to understand that celebrating is great, but it has its time.
Right.
But we also have to know that we're humans, and we all have a love language. We all have a language that validates us. And some of us know what that language is. Some of us don't know in words what it is, but we know the validation that we need. And if we don't get that validation, that's where it makes us incredibly vulnerable to this stopping and celebrating stuff, of thinking I'm feeling inadequate, unloved, underappreciated, and it's because we're not getting validated in our love language, so then we'll use other things. And in today's culture, that's self-medicating, whether that's drugs or alcohol, whether that's, inappropriate, content in our lives, whether that's, affairs or overspending, buying those things we don't need. Those are just forms of self-medicating because we're not getting our love languages taken care of along the way. So it becomes really important that we understand, here's what I need for validation.
Right.
And here's and that validation isn't selfish. It's the fuel that enables my race car to get to the finish line. It's the pit stop, not the party.
Right.
That's tweetable.
We
should put that
the
pit stop, not the party.
That is a book title. That is a sermon title. There's a lot that can be done with that.
That's a good one.
So, and what you're talking about, it reminds me of Coach Saban's 24-hour rule. You get 24 hours to celebrate a win or mourn a loss, but after that, we're moving forward and we're preparing for next Saturday's game. And so that idea of, give yourself the grace to feel what you need to feel in this moment for a little while, but put a time limit on it, and then we got to move on.
That's right.
So I really, really like that. So I think that's a great point for us to stop today. Do you have any other thoughts or anything?
I think just this idea that take care of yourself, figure out what that love language is. There's lots of books and podcasts and all those things on it, but understand what you need, and then be transparent enough with a few people around you to say, if my behavior looks like this, will you remind me that this is the fuel I need to kickstart that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ron. And
Thank you.
You guys have an awesome week.
See you next week.
Thanks for joining us. If today's conversation has ignited greatness in you, take your next step and visit ronkitchens.com to gain more inspiration and to connect with Ron. You can also tweet Ron at Ron Kitchens. Until next time, keep moving, always forward.